Andrew, if you hadn't told me, I would have no idea that Fred is terrible at Fortnite. May not be legit. Cool. So, we looked at these pieces yesterday. Now, there's a lot of them, and today we are going to start off with controlling cell activities. So, everything that we saw before had to deal with structure, essentially. The cytoplasm, the microtubules, those are all part of the structural body. Even the appendages can be looked at as structure because their primary function is to do their job, right? So that might be able to fit elsewhere. But as we continue on, Andrew is going to walk us through controlling cell activities. Now, in the context of a factory, which is the one that's pretty natural to use, who's in charge of saying what gets produced when and where at a big factory? The manager, right? So they're the one that makes all the decisions. We're going to pump more of this, whatever. Like they're the decider. Okay. In our cell, we have somebody, not literally somebody, but there has to be something that makes those decisions. They're biochemical decisions, so no decisions really get made. But somebody has to tell everybody what to do. Cool. Andrew, who tells everybody what to do within a cell?
The nuclear membrane.
So before that, what's the bigger piece? The nuclear membrane surrounds the
nuclear envelope.
we're getting there. Let's look. Oh, so you're getting more of these. Why C and P, just out of curiosity?
C for.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, cool. So, you didn't hit it. You gave me some smaller, more specific pieces. We're going to give ourselves the nucleus. Okay, the nucleus of a cell. Now, for this, right off the bat, what do we call the instructions that cells and things use, like that set of directions that says this is how you're going to do stuff? It's a nucleic acid, and it's probably the only one that you can think of.
Huh?
What's the set of instructions in our body that tells us, like our cells, what to do? Because I don't have to think about it, right?
The brain.
But I don't have to think about it. That's how I control nerve signals. Starts with a D. Oxy.
Deoxy.
Nucleic.
Oh, deoxyribo.
It's deoxyribo. Nucleic acid.
Yeah.
Okay. Yuck. Deoxyribonucleic acid. There's only a nice shorthand, I think, though. What's deoxyribonucleic acid?
In short,
Uh-huh.
DNA.
This is DNA. The set of instructions that tells your cells what to do is your DNA. Now, turns out the nucleus is where you would find all those instructions, which makes sense, contains, and I'm going to say most of our DNA. Okay. And I'm going to say most of the instead of our. The DNA. Because even plant cells have a nucleus. So when we're looking at this, it makes sense. The manager has the instructions, and they're the ones responsible for distributing those instructions everywhere. So most of the DNA is here. Now, as we look at it, it turns out I think that a nice way to do this is just with a picture. If you guys want colored pencils, you can, but I'm not going to require it. I'm going to draw a two-dimensional picture of it. So I would draw the picture. Now, part of this, and we're going to have to do this, and it's hard for me to do up here because it's big. I'm going to make it a double layer and try to make it clear that there's two layers around this thing. Now, it's tough to do on a big page like this, but can you guys tell there's just two layers?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as we look at this, you do not have to do it exactly like me, but I like it when I can very clearly see the stuff that I'm after. So I'm going to shade this just a little bit on the inside, just lightly. And I'm doing this for a reason, but you guys do not have to. So let's say here's our nucleus that we're looking at it. Right off the bat, there's a few different things that we have around this. First off, Andrew, this double layer that I've drawn, and I think I'm going to make it just a single thick layer. with the understanding that it's truly a double layer. So I'm just going to shade that in so I can tell the difference. A little bit easier. Oh my gosh, this is getting so much worse.
So what's that?
This is just, I'm making that double layer outside just a little bit more clear on this picture. Okay, Andrew, around our nucleus, we have this lovely double layer thing. What do we call it?
Call that
It holds.
nuclear envelope.
This is the nuclear envelope, or the envelope. Now, when you see it, that word, when you think envelope, I imagine we all think of the same thing. What do you think of?
Envelope, like you ship something.
Like for mail, right? Okay. If I just change the emphasis of the syllables and I say it envelops something, do you know what I'm talking about?
Kind of sounds like develop.
So it does kind of sound like develop, but envelope means to like contain. So where do you put what is your letter is contained in a what? When you mail it. If I want to mail it, I just don't mail a piece of paper. I contain it in an
Envelope.
I envelop it in this piece of paper.
Right.
Yeah. So this is what is known as our nuclear. And I pronounce it envelope, but I hope you don't think I'm pretentious because of that. Okay, our nuclear envelope. This thing is our protective membrane because remember organelles are well defined with their membranes. This is our double layer membrane to protect everything inside. Double layer membrane. Okay. So if this is where all of the directions that say how do we like live as cells, it's important that it's protected. It's within the cell, so it's already kind of protected by the plasma membrane, but it's also even double protected inside with that double membrane. Okay. Now, is it possible that within here you still need to get a little bit of stuff in and out of here? Because it has to have ways to get it out.
Sure.
Andy, how do we get stuff in and out of this nucleus?
It has nuclear pores that allows larger size substances to move in and out of the nucleus.
So check it out. I'm going to take a few spots here, and there's very clear, like these are way drawn big, but there's little holes where I can move stuff in and out. Just like we saw with our transport proteins, we get these little holes, and I've only drawn 4 of them on mine. These are what again?
Nuclear pores.
Nuclear pores. Okay. When I see the word pore, I do not think of the nucleus of a cell. I imagine we all think of the same thing. What's a pore?
Like a small hole, like in your face. Pores.
I think of on my skin because I have pores where sweat and stuff comes out, right? Okay, so we have nuclear pores. This allows for larger molecules to exit and enter. I'm going to say come and go. All right, so we have most of our DNA within here. It's surrounded by this nuclear envelope. It's double layered for double protection. But we do have to make sure that some larger things, nuclear pores, larger molecules, come and go. All right, beyond that, it turns out that we get a little bit more important, and I don't remember if this is Fred. Anybody in here do manufacturing proteins?
Oh, me.
Okay, so can you tell me what ribosomes are?
Ribosomes.
Yeah, and we're not going to write it down yet because we're going to see it here first.
It's an organelle that help create protein.
Okay, remember that proteins pretty much are everywhere in our body. The things that make the proteins that we need are called ribosomes. Now, it turns out that within this, ribosomes need to be like assembled very specifically via like some set of instructions, maybe in the form of DNA. So as we look at this, we're going to add a more solid ball inside of here. Okay, so we have our envelope with pores, and then we have some gunk kind of floating around, which we'll get to that gunk here in just a second. But then we have this solid looking piece in the very middle. This right here is the very middle of our nucleus. We refer to this as the nucleolus. Now, we'll learn here in a second or in a few minutes from Zed what these do, but the nucleolus plays a super duper important role. All of these play super important roles within the cell, obviously. But as we're looking at this, our nucleolus, what does it do?
Nucleolus.
Yep. I saw it on the top. I think it was the first word that you had. It produces something.
For controlling or processing?
This is for controlling, I suppose. The nucleolus produces or assembles something important.
Assembles.
So if you don't have it, that's okay. Make sure you have it in your notes, okay?
Okay.
This is where our ribosomes are made.
Because from controlling, I only really got two things from what I read, because how small it was. That's about as much as I got.
Yep, so I get 4 things out of it, so we should check to make sure that we can see where those come from, but I don't make you guys do a ton of independent reading either. It's a good thing to practice, just in general. Okay, we have ribosomes, which wind up folding and making our proteins the way that they need to be. Those ribosomes are created here, in the middle of our nucleus called the nucleolus. Now, in all these pictures, last little thing I'm going to add to this, and I'm going to make it red just so it stands out a little bit. There's a bunch of little stringy things that typically float around. Okay, now it kind of looks like a scary eyeball or something, but that's okay. As we're looking at this, these little stringy things that we're looking at, they have a very specific name, and we're going to deal with them further down the road as well. But we have all these little strings that sit inside of this structure known as chromatin. So here we go. Last little piece within our nucleus. All those little strings are chromatin. I don't know why this one's coming out cap when the other ones didn't, but that's all right. Okay, for the chromatin, this is just complex DNA that's been attached to proteins. So for a variety of reasons, different proteins can bond at different active sites when we look at enzymes and things like that. This is DNA that's been stuck to a protein so that it can bond elsewhere in the future. So we're just going to say DNA and protein. I'm going to say bonded to, or stuck to is probably a nicer word. Stuck to protein. Proteins. Now, just as we are examining this, I had a couple cell models. Did they disappear? Nope, they up here. Yep. So check it out. As we're looking at this, I have this lovely nuclear structure right here. Notice all these little balls on the outside look almost like a golf ball, right? Yeah. These are all of our nuclear pores. How many layers do you see on here? You see on the outside. Is there two, right? I can see there's light blue. And I should just do this up here. Why would I do it there? Okay. Yeah, right. So, here is our lovely cell that we're examining. Can you guys see the nucleus here?
Yeah.
It's the golf ball looking thing in the middle, yeah? Now, all those little dots on the outside, those are the whats? Those are the nuclear pores. Is there a clear double layer that we have going on here?
Yeah.
Light blue and dark blue. Okay, what's this? Right in the middle of it.
Nucleus.
The whole thing is a nucleus.
Oh, nucleus, pro.
Sound it out, you're missing some letters. Nucleo.
Oh, nucleolus.
This is a nucleolus, and what's made in the nucleolus?
Produce, assemble, or move.
Ribosomes. Okay, and then notice there's all these little stringy things out here. What you are seeing is DNA that's attached itself to proteins that just kind of float around in here. What's the name of those DNA connected to these proteins? Chromatin. Chromatin. Okay, now, real quick, I've read these and it's been a long time since I've done biology, and I think I've expressed that to you guys before. My pronunciation could be off. This is one that I think we should check. So we're going to say scratch that, chromatin. Weird, I'm pretty sure that I learned it as chromatin years ago. Weird. All right, so here we have our lovely nucleus, and this is where literally all of our directions come from. The DNA that's stored in here is the DNA that tells every cell in our body, or whatever cell we're looking at, how to function, what its role is, what it does. Okay, beyond just controlling cell activities, the nucleus is like you said not processing the what? I can't remember how we worded it. You said processing and what? Control?
Yeah, process.
Okay.
Controlling
The nucleus controls everything. Awesome. Now, moving a bit forward, there's one more piece. So we looked at how do we control all the activities that these cells knock out. That happens within the nucleus. Beyond that, we also have to do some processing stuff. So I'm going to make this a tilde. When we look at processing things, and I'll make this its own bullet point outline, we need to do some processing within a cell because there's a lot of movement in and out. When we talk about processing, it's sorting, organizing, making sure things go to the right place. Okay, so when we process, one of the big things that we need as people and as cells need and pretty much anything alive needs, you need energy of some sort. Okay, for this, there is a big one right off the bat, and I'm going to use red for no particular reason. Andrew, can you give me one thing that helps to process energy within our cell? The mitochondria. So here we go. I'm going to make this a capitalization. And then what I'll do before we have class again, guys, is when we finish this, I will have a single sheet that has them all listed with small pictures and all of their functions, so we don't have to dig through like 4 pages of notes. But I think it's worth talking about and building it up as we go. Cool. All right. Mitochondria. When I think of this, I think of the meme version of it, the powerhouse of the cell. I do want to show you guys something that we are going to read toward the end of this lesson, which my guess is Tuesday, just because we don't have school. But at the very end of the chapter, there's a little snippet to read that says mitochondria, more than just a powerhouse. So it does do more than just create the energy. And again, we're not in a hardcore chemistry class, but what does mitochondria do?
Which converts fuel, mainly sugar, into usable energy. It's shaped like a pill.
Fuel to energy. Now, the primary source of this is going to be, you said, sugars, right?
Yeah.
Which these are, remember, just a reminder, saccharides. Monosaccharide is glucose. These are simple sugars. Okay, so as we're looking at these, you say shaped like a cell. I love it. I am going to draw a small picture of it here for us here in just a second. I want to say one more thing. Can you tell me anything else about it?
Has an outer membrane and a highly fluid inner membrane that provides a larger surface area for breaking bonds into sugar molecules.
Okay, so there's a lot of chemistry happening in that statement, and that's about the structure of it, but I want to make sure we hit this part really hard.
Oh,
I know the mitochondria produces energy. That's one thing that it does.
stored in bond of other molecules.
So it uses its structure to break apart bonds to get energy out of them because it takes energy to hold two atoms together. We break those apart, the energy has to go somewhere. The mitochondria takes that and processes it. What I care the most about with this specifically is that it produces and stores a specific molecule called adenosine triphosphate, ATP. I want you to have this in your notes. Make sure you have it. ATP is a huge role. This is the molecule that our cell uses for energy. So when we say it's the powerhouse of the cell, it's because it does this. It's not all it does, but it does do this. Okay, when we're looking at it, you said it's cell-shaped, or sorry, pill-shaped, and my picture is not going to be crazy good, but I am going to draw it as three-dimensionally as I can. So I'm going to make a little oval here, and then I'm just going to put a bowl underneath of it. So there it is. There's a three-dimensional bowl. Okay, now in this three-dimensional bowl, we're just seeing the outer structure. So much like the nucleus, I'm not going to take the time to draw it, but the membrane that surrounds this, because it's an organelle, is double-layered membrane. Double-layered membrane. Just like the nucleus. Now I was going to write nucleus there. So there's two layers around it, which is an important idea. Now, within this, there is another membrane within. And the way that it looks, and I'll go back to the picture here in a second, is if I had a sheet of paper, for example, and don't draw this yet, if I had a sheet of paper, I can only fit so big of a sheet of paper in here, right? It turns out that all of this conversion between our sugars and breaking these bonds of molecules, it happens on an inner membrane here. And we're not going to go into the chemistry, but if I wanted to fit as much paper in there as possible. Would I use just single big straight pieces of paper?
No.
No. What gets me more like, you ever hear a rude insult calling somebody smooth brain?
Yeah.
You know what it means?
No knowledge.
Like, it means they're not very bright.
Yeah.
Koalas are legitimately one of the dumbest animals on earth. If you look at the brain of a koala, it is completely smooth. Like, they're dumb. Our brains are not smooth. Why would our brains not be smooth? What's the benefit of having a folded brain?
More storage, more information to store.
Can you fit more stuff on the surface of a smooth sphere or a really bumpy sphere?
Really bumpy sphere.
Because there's more surface area. So as we look at this, it's the same idea. There is an inner membrane within here that folds itself up like this to give itself more surface area to deal with. And all of a sudden, instead of having a small piece of paper, we get all of these sheets, if you will, where these functions can happen. So I'm just going to label this one folded inner membrane. And the reason that it folds is the same reason that our brain does. We get more surface area, which means we get more processes occurring because there's more places for it to happen. So folded inner membrane. Okay, the surface area is a big driver for this one. Cool. As we look at this thing, we're going to keep kicking just a little bit. The mitochondria, there are many of them. Mitochondrion is the singular version of this. There's several mitochondria throughout the cell because you need energy in different places, and it makes sense if you have a bunch of energy going to different places, more than one location for that energy would be helpful. Okay. Beyond this, these are present in both animal and plant cells. Both of them get them. However, as we start kicking forward a little bit here, there are some unique ones that plants might get. In a plant, I'm going to switch to green because we're going to talk about plants. Plants do convert some sugar into energy. It happens. But plants do something really cool that we can't. What you got?
I got some water.
You can't. I mean, you should probably drink it instead of trying to grab it and carry it back, but yes. What do plants do differently than me for energy?
They use sunlight.
They use the sun. Specifically, I like the language, but it's not literal. They eat sunlight.
Yeah.
Now, what's that process called?
Photosynthesis.
It's called photosynthesis. Now, there is a larger class here than we see, but in plants, they have mitochondria that they deal with these sugars to make energy, but plants don't eat sugar, right? Like we eat stuff to get sugar in our body. Plants don't. They have to make their own, and they do that via sunlight. And it turns out that plants have this other special one that we are going to refer to as chloroplasts. Okay, and I'm just going to put here plants. Plants have chloroplasts, not animal cells, only plants. Now, as we look at chloroplasts, these, and I'm going to say plants, and I should have said this, and some eucs. Because we do have some plant-like things that aren't really plants. So that's my bad. Sorry about that. Okay, plants and some eukaryotes. Now, these are the specific functions or the specific parts of a plant cell that capture sunlight to convert into energy. Now, as we're looking at these, because they're producing energy, they do have a similar structure to mitochondria. Like, they're similar. The one small difference, and I'm going to draw this picture again if you don't want, whoa, I don't know how I did that. If you don't want to draw the picture, you don't have to, but I'm going to draw essentially the same shape that I did before. And then we'll go ahead and do this. So it's another bean-looking thing, but small difference. Or big difference, huge functional difference, really. In the mitochondria, it's a folded membrane so that you can get more surface area. In this, it is not a folded membrane, and this is going to be hard to see, I think, but we have a bunch of little discs within our chloroplast. And when I do it, it winds up looking like a bowl of noodles because I'm just going to draw my circles like this. We have a bunch of these discs, and we'll talk about them at least a little bit. All these discs are there to catch the sunlight and to use the process of photosynthesis to produce those sugars to make energy. Okay, as we're looking at these, I'm not going to quiz you on this specific part of it, but I do think it's worth talking about. Turns out that those disc-like things that we have, it's not just a folded inner membrane, they are known as thylakoids. These are the things that really make our plants essentially solar panels.
Can you draw the picture?
If you want to, they're discs instead. Like, it's very similar. So if we get a plant cell out, and I hope somebody didn't like steal my model that I have sitting around. Kinda looks, nope, I'm wrong. Okay, this one does not show it. Does your picture, yeah, check out your picture on your worksheet. There's a plant cell on it. Do you try to find it through the mitochondria? Sorry, not the mitochondria, the chloroplast. You did find the mitochondria, nice job. Where's the chloroplast? And I might have it up here still. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
So it's like it is. I would probably say the. Well, I can't tell because it's like no details. I can't notice the small dots.
So, do you see in that picture? Can I steal this from you? Oh, I have it here.
I see. I think it might be the green ones.
So let's check. We have bean-like structures. So here's a plant cell. This is a pill or bean-looking thing that has a bunch of folds. What's this?
Mitochondria.
Okay. What is? And we're just gonna hit a few of these. What is this big purple thing?
Purple thing is the nucleus.
This is a nucleus. How about this dark purple thing?
Purple nucleolus.
That's my nucleolus. Cool. Looking at this, we do have some microtubules still showing up. I can see a little tube down here, and we don't have to label it yet. I'm just pointing at stuff. Do you see any bean-shaped things that looks like maybe they have discs in them instead? Hey, what do you think these things are right here?
Chloroplast.
They're my chloroplasts. Okay, on this three-dimensional figure. What? All right, here's my three-dimensional figure of a plant cell. Looking at it, do you guys see what you think might be the chloroplasts?
Yeah.
Where?
The green at the bottom.
So tell me which way to go.
Down. Left.
Hey, that looks like it could be a chloroplast. It might be the mitochondria, just looking at it, because the colors are just there for identifying purposes. I'm pretty confident that I agree with you. I think there's another one right here. We just can't see the inside of it. I think there's one right here that we can't see the inside of it.
I thought it might be yellow at first because it looks like a buildup of disc, but I didn't.
Yep, so it's tough to see with the colors especially, but every picture that you look at is going to have a slightly different color, so just be wary of that. Like, the colors that I'm using are not specific. Cool. All right, so we have those guys. They are awesome. They're hanging out there. Let's keep kicking. What was I looking at?
10:16. That's what so quick.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having what?
One.
Indeed. Are you having fun right now?
Yeah.
Are you really? Good. Bam Bam's having fun. I hear him laughing over there. All right. So, chloroplasts, I'll tell you, the green color in plants is due to chloroplasts. Like these ones, like we get a lot of chloroplasts in plants. They're green. Okay. Have you ever seen a plant that's not green? Okay. So, what we have, and I'm not going to go crazy into this, but chloroplasts are a part of a larger group called the plastids. Okay, and there's a lot of them. If somebody, do you guys know a word for color, a Greek word for it? You might not. Chroma. Chroma is the Greek word for color. So think of a plant that has something other than green.
A rose red.
Roses are red, right? Flowers are really colorful. In flowers, they do have chloroplasts. They certainly do because they photosynthesize, but chloroplasts come in a variety of different types and organizations that are known as the plastids as a larger group. Chromoplasts are the ones that are responsible for making those colors on your plants. Now, just random thought in my mind regarding evolution stuff, what color would have been like the best color for plants to be, do you think?
Yellow. Yeah, I don't know.
Why yellow?
Yellow.
So you want, if you're a plant, you want as much sunlight as you can get, right? What color have you ever noticed just when you're outside living life does the best job of absorbing sunlight? Black.
Wait.
Black absorbs so much light. If you've ever seen Vanta Black, have you guys ever seen Vanta Black?
Yeah.
It's weird when you see something that's painted Vanta Black because it loses all meaning because it absorbs all the light. There are very few plants that are black. Evolutionarily speaking, I don't know why that's the case. Hopefully we get into that.
Wait, we have black plants.
Very few. There's like chocolate lilies that are like dark brown. But why green is a reasonable question. And there's no real reason. Evolution doesn't happen to fill a niche. It's something that happens and then it works, so it sticks. So, I don't know. Just a thought. Kind of interesting. Cool. Awesome. We can process energy. We can send directions. Let's talk a little bit about proteins. Sweet. Remember, proteins, I would argue, are like the most important stuff. Because, and I don't know if that's really true, they're all important, but there's like 20 million different proteins that have been identified. 20 million of them. Okay, so last section, and then it looks like on Tuesday, because we don't have school Monday, I know, don't cry too much, we will finish this stuff up and then kind of try to summarize it in a nicer way. Our next section that Zed is going to walk us through has to do with manufacturing proteins. Now, I just want to take a trip through the stuff that we've talked about. Using your notes, can you tell me what the nucleolus does?
Nucleolus?
Yep.
Ribosomes.
It makes ribosomes. Okay. Now, right off the bat, ribosomes play a very essential role in life. And I think Zed is going to tell us about that. Is that the first one that you have, Zed?
Yeah.
Is ribosomes good? Okay. Ribosomes, I know that they're made in the nucleolus, and that is about it. We said some other stuff, we didn't write it down. Zed, what do ribosomes do for us?
Helps you buy base protein.
Awesome. I'm going to use the word manufacture,
Yeah.
but I'm good with that. The ribosomes, their goal and their purpose is to manufacture proteins. Now, remember, proteins serve so many purposes. So many. It allows cells to connect. We'll go into them in more detail, but we know that they're super important. Did you happen to get what they're made of?
They're made of RNA and proteins.
Made of RNA,
Yeah.
ribonucleic acid, so no deoxy part. This is not quite DNA, but we have RNA and other proteins. So this is super meta just right off the bat. We have proteins that are complex pieces made of, that are complex proteins that produce other proteins. Cool. A job of a protein is to make other proteins. Meta. That's awesome. Now, anything else you can tell me about them? They're a very unique organelle. If you don't have this, make sure that you get it. Ribosomes do not have a membrane. They are an organelle that does not have a membrane around it. Okay. As we look at this, ribosomes, we don't get to see them super clearly because they're pretty small since they're not well defined by a membrane. It's hard to pick them out. But you are going to find these in two places. You're going to find the ribosomes, in the nucleolus, and then through some process, like maybe working through microtubules and nuclear pores and such, they leave the nucleolus because proteins are needed elsewhere. Okay, so the ribosomes get made, and then where do they go, Zed? I'm going to call it the ER if you're hesitating.
Endoplasmic reticulum.
We get our endoplasmic reticulum. All right, so right off the bat, the endoplasmic reticulum, it's a lot of letters. Henceforth, when I speak, I'm going to use the full term, the endoplasmic reticulum, okay? I'm going to use it. Shorthand, it's our ER. Now, right off the bat, these are going to be one of the easier ones to identify. The nucleus is always going to be easy because it's a big ball somewhere in the cell. The endoplasmic reticulum is also going to be easy to spot out. What would you say do you have a definition for this?
Yeah.
What you got?
So it's a membrane system that is like involved in proteins and lipid synthesis.
So it's a membrane system,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to say it's folded, and we'll see that very clearly when we look at a picture, that makes lipids and proteins.
Yeah.
Cool. That creates, what's a lipid? Good. Now, we need lipids, right? Because we have that plasma membrane that's literally made of lipids. So if any of them go bad, they're going to make more in the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, lipids and proteins. Now, don't love this statement because we just said a second ago, what actually makes proteins? Ribosomes. So what do you think is probably going to be present in at least some portion of the ER, the endoplasmic reticulum? Ribosomes make proteins, and endoplasmic reticulum makes proteins. What do you think we're going to find within that reticulum? Lipids, probably. Would you also agree that ribosomes must also exist there if ribosomes are the things that make proteins? So, last little statement here. We get two versions of this. We have the rough ER, or endoplasmic reticulum, and we have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. We will jump in right here next class, but I do want to show you here on this lovely animal cell.
Oh, rough and smooth ER.
Do you see anything in here that looks like it's a bunch of folded stuff that's clearly large and defined?
The peak.
The peak. What do you mean the peak?
The peak.
The pink. Okay, yeah. I think this looks like a membrane that's been folded up. And this looks like a membrane that's folded up. And then at some portions of this, you see a bunch of little yellow dots floating around. Thoughts on what maybe these yellow dots are?
I think those are the rough ER.
So you're right, the whole structure is the rough ER. I think these are little ribosomes floating around that we can physically see them. They're well defined here, which is not quite true. But we'll pick up here on Tuesday. Remember, write a nice letter to your favorite president for President's Day.